The Lord be with you. Well, one of the nice things that our conference has done for pastors and for people who are going through some severe withdrawal, trying to deal with the isolation that we're in, is they offered a spiritual retreat, a weekend-long retreat for people. And they did it virtually. Which sounds like a very weird idea, but they handled it very well, and it occurred to me, having been blessed to participate in it, just how helpful spiritual disciplines are to be able to get us through the times that we're living in. These things really do help us cope mentally and spiritually with fear and anxiety. So one of the things that we have been trying to do in some of these videos is introduce spiritual disciplines to allow you opportunities to sort of cope with the quarantine and the limitations and isolation that we find ourselves in. So we've already talked about practicing the presence. We have talked about Lectio Divina. We even just recently did a video on keeping Sabbath, which may not initially seem like a spiritual discipline. But what we find, I think, is that many of us don't really keep a whole Sabbath day. We just have times of worship, and then we treat the rest of time just like any other day of the week. And to actually keep a Sabbath is an actual discipline. It's an art. It's an exercise that we have to practice. So while all of those have been introduced already, I'd like to introduce a new one today, which is centering prayer. And centering prayer is part of a larger concept called contemplative prayer. And this is a much bigger topic than I can define for you in one of these short videos. But the essence of contemplative prayer is just trying to be still and present with God. It has very little to do with words. As a matter of fact, it really has nothing to do with words. It's more about silence. And the main concept is the better that we can enter into silence and bring order to all of the disorder in our inner life, the better that affects our external life, and we can live a more calm and a better life that focuses on God being present with us. It opens up a level of awareness for us. So there are different aspects underneath the broader umbrella of contemplative prayer, and one of those aspects is centering prayer. And the idea is very simple. It is just to quiet ourselves and to bring us into the presence of God and allow us to center ourselves on the heart of God and on the person of Jesus. So there's really about 4 things that you need for centering prayer. And let me just say as a disclaimer, all of these spiritual disciplines that I have introduced, I've forgotten to mention that they're all kind of specific to the person who's introducing them to you. So you could be doing Lectio Divina under a different spiritual director or a different leader, and they might describe it differently than I described it to you in videos past. As a matter of fact, and this spiritual retreat weekend that I did virtually with our central conference, their version of Lectio Divina had 4 stages to it. They weren't quite the same as the 3 stages that I introduced to you, but that's just it. All of these practices, there's no one set right way to do them. It really is individual. It really does come down to the context that you're in and the people who sort of introduce them to you. So this is going to be true for centering prayer as well. I'm going to give you the 4 basic things from the way that I understand centering prayer. And those things are, you need a place to sit comfortably. That's the first thing you need. So whether that's a comfortable chair, whether you sit on a mat, whether you sit on a couch, you just want to be in a comfortable position with some good posture. So feet flat on the floor, back kind of straight, hands in your lap, either folded or loose or hanging at your sides, whatever is most comfortable for you. The second thing, you're going to need about 20 minutes to do centering prayer well. Most people recommend 20 to 30 minutes. We're actually going to try centering prayer towards the end of this video. We're only going to do a 5-minute version for you, just to get you into the practice, especially if you've never done it before. So just a warning, if you aren't into doing the practice as part of the video, because the last few minutes of this video are going to be mostly in silence, I'll sort of narrate us through it. Then by all means, after I just give you the explanation of it, you don't have to watch any further in the video. Otherwise, if you want to participate with us, certainly I encourage you to do so. So that's the second thing. You need enough time to have about a 20-minute experience. The third thing is you need to have an open mind and an open heart to God. It's hard to do centering prayer if you're not going to focus yourself. And kind of the fourth thing is we typically recommend that you have a sacred word or a sacred image. Because this is a practice of silence, what you will find is your mind is going to fight against it. You have all these things kind of on the edge of your consciousness, on the edge of your thoughts. We have all these distractions that always want to pull our minds in different directions. So the idea behind this sacred word or sacred image is just something, not that you can repeat as a mantra, but something that can be used to anchor you and to draw you back into that silence and draw you back into that centering process. And it's used to dismiss and sort of shed all of those other thoughts or distractions that you're having. So those are the 4 basic things to do centering prayer. Now, let me also say, centering prayer is just one style of prayer. It isn't there to replace other forms of prayer. It isn't there to compete against other forms of prayer. There are certainly other ways to pray. I think most of us have kind of a default way that we gravitate towards, one primary way that we're used to praying. And it's very word-based. It's a lot of verbiage. We like to do all the talking, and that's part of the problem with the way that we do prayer, especially if we only do it in one mode all the time, is we never really learn how to let God talk back or to experience God in a way that isn't necessarily verbal. So centering prayer and contemplative prayer is supposed to open us up to not depending upon what we say to God, but just enjoying being with God. So we're going to try that for a couple of minutes. What I'm going to do is I'm going to set a timer for 5 minutes. I will give us sort of a opening prayer to just quiet us and help us enter into centering prayer, into our time of silence. I'm going to ask you to have a sacred word or an image already picked out. For some people, it can be a word like God or Jesus or spirit, breath, faith, something like that. For other people, an image works best, like the cross or the throne of God, or even the symbol of the Trinity, if you're familiar with that. So whatever it is, have your word ready. I'll read an opening prayer just to kind of quiet us, and then I will give you a little bit of narration of what you should be doing and thinking about as you're praying. So let's take just a few minutes to try this. At the end, you should set a timer, so that you don't become conscious of time, that you aren't trying to focus on how much time is passing or when you need to stop. A timer really frees you to enter into the experience. And then have it some kind of gentle thing to bring you out of it, whether it's some kind of chime or a gong sound, something soft and reflective. And then we spend a few minutes more in silence, and then we usually close with either a prayer of thanks or, as we're going to do today, in the Lord's Prayer. So, calm yourself, close your eyes, get yourself comfortable, and hear this opening prayer. Now, O Lord, calm me into a quietness that heals and listens and molds my longings and passions, my wounds and wonderings into a more holy and human shape. Now just make sure that your feet are comfortable and flat. Make sure that your weight isn't leaning too much onto your shoulders and creating tension for yourself. Go ahead and take some deep breaths and become conscious of your breathing. And remember that in both the Hebrew and the Greek, the words for spirit are the same words for breath and for wind. You'll start to notice noises around you, artificial noises of what's going on in your house or in your neighborhood. Just sort of let those fade to the background. Depending upon what time of day you do this, you may notice noises of life from outside, nature, children. As you allow those sounds to sort of drift away and just become part of a distant background, you'll have plenty of things going on internally. Thoughts that want to grab your attention and that are going to keep you from being centered and being present with God. Use your sacred word or your sacred image to keep bringing you back. Don't worry about what you're going to say to God. Just take some time enjoying being with God. And as all these other things continue to compete for your attention, just find yourself centered and present with God and with Jesus in such a way that you can feel and not have to speak. after several moments of that, again, if we were doing this in a longer fashion, time would just sort of drip away. Your body would become much more calm and relaxed until you hear your alarm. And when you hear your alarm, you don't have to rush into alertness. Just continue breathing for a second with your eyes closed. Start to become aware again of the room sounds and being present in the room. And then as you become comfortable, open your eyes and just sort of reorient yourself to the room that you're in. Remember for a moment that time that you spent with Jesus. And then either offer him thanks or, in our case, the Lord's Prayer, so feel free to join me. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory forever. Amen. And when you are done with centering prayer, then you shed it, much like you shed all of the distractions of the world. You receive it as a gift. You enjoy the benefits of it, the calmness, the relaxation, and hopefully it helps deal with the fears and the anxieties that you are experiencing in your situation, even beyond our current quarantines. And as you do it as a daily practice, again, my hope is that it draws you deeper into the heart of God, helps you get through this time, develops your spiritual life and your spiritual disciplines at deeper levels. And again, in our times of isolation, the peace of God be with you. Amen.